Hello and welcome to The Downsize. My name is Christopher Durham, and this is the channel where we talk about all things GLP-1, obesity management, weight loss, just general health and wellness, trying to get everybody a little bit healthier. My name is Christopher Durham. My wife and I started this channel almost 2 years ago at this point to talk about our GLP-1 journey. We've lost 150 pounds between the two of us using Tirzepatide, and it's changed our lives. And honestly, when things change your life, you want to tell people about it. So we publish videos every day. I'm happy to welcome Dr. Evan Nadler here. Evan, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, my pleasure, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Before we jump in, of course, you notice Dr. Nadler is a doctor. He is a doctor, but he's not your doctor. I'm not a doctor. None of this is medical advice. Okay. This is for education and entertainment purposes. If you'd like to begin obesity treatment, whether that be bariatric surgery or medications, it doesn't matter. Talk to your doctor and build a plan for you. Your health care is important, and we want to make sure you get the best care you can possibly get.
And if you have a kid who needs obesity care, you can email me and I'll help you find where you need to send your child. Because the reality is, and I'm sort of jumping the gun here a little bit, but the reality is there aren't enough pediatric obesity treatment centers in this country, and they're hard to find, and they have long waiting lists. So don't get frustrated. And you can send me an email and I'll help you out.
Perfect. And we'll put his email in the description too. So before we do that, of course, like and subscribe. This is YouTube. Like and subscribe. So we appreciate that. All right, Dr. Nadler, well, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Well, I cut to the chase a little bit before even the intro was finished, so I apologize for that. But my passion for childhood obesity treatment runs deep. So, folks, my name is Evan Nadler, and I have been doing bariatric surgery for children since 2004. So that's a shocker. They teach you in the social media world that you need to lead with something that catches people's attention. So there it is. I've been doing weight loss surgery on children for over 20 years. So wow. I feel like I have a perspective on this disease that most people don't. Most people in the medical world don't, and certainly most of the lay public doesn't. And I wasn't just doing surgery. I was publishing clinical trials. I was doing science in the laboratory. These kids actually have a bunch of publications on how fat cells even work, and had a company about that unfortunately didn't pan out, but it was good science. It just didn't have a financial, couldn't make the money work, I guess.
Yep.
But basically, I've been treating kids with obesity for, as I said, over 20 years. I have a real strong interest in the genetics of obesity, the epigenetics of obesity, something called the intergenerational transmission of obesity, which is sort of how and why it runs in families. And mostly my message is that childhood obesity is a disease, just like adult onset obesity is a disease. All obesity is a disease. It actually comes from a bunch of different pathways, especially in children. But most importantly, it's a disease worth treating. It's not a disease anyone really should ignore, and especially in kids, because I like to make the analogy that it's kind of like smoking and how we used to talk about cigarettes. And it wasn't just how many packs a day you smoke, but it was for how many years. So it's not just what's your BMI, but it's how long you've been at that BMI and how long your body has been suffering to try to keep the effects of excess adipose tissue from hurting the organ systems. So I went Dr. E a little bit at the end there. But
no, we love that. We love that. I mean, so there's a lot to unpack in there. So I love all of that. So, but let's start at the beginning for you. So how did you get involved in obesity? How did you get to that 20 years ago doing bariatric surgery with children? Tell me that.
Yeah. So I'm a fully trained pediatric surgeon and have been practicing pediatric surgery, general pediatric surgery, since 2002, I guess. And the sort of epiphany moment for me was during my training, actually. I was at a pediatric surgery meeting, national meeting in Orlando, Florida at Disney with my wife in, I think, May, Memorial Day weekend or the weekend before, something like that. And I was representing data from some of the science I had conducted, totally unrelated to weight. And I was sitting at the pool that's between the dolphin and the swan, for those of you who know Disney.
Mm-hmm.
And I was staring at the people around the pool. And it was sort of an eye-opener for me. I actually turned to my wife and said, someone in this country has to do something about all the folks here who are suffering from obesity and the consequences thereof. And even look at the children around the pool. They were the same.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, I mean, I could go into there was actually a child who I don't want to, obviously I don't want to shame, body shame the kid, but young kid with weight issues and a greasy cheeseburger and a 2-liter bottle of Coke and a 1-pound bag of Lay's potato chips at the pool in Orlando in May, where it's like 90 or 100 degrees and humid as all get out. And I think that combination of things I just realized that it was biology. It wasn't a choice that any person would make because it was way too hot to be eating those things. So anyway.
We say it all the time. I've never met, we've interviewed more than 100 people on the channel. I have never met one person who woke up and said, I want to be fat today.
Right. No, of course not. And especially think about that as a teenager, right? Or adolescent. Adolescence is hard enough. Being a 7th grade girl might be the hardest thing in human existence.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're just the meanest people in human existence.
As a father of 2 girls, I'll tell you that's true.
So, but then imagine doing that with obesity, with a disease that people can see on you. Like they just see it from across the room and immediately judge you for having that disease. So yeah, for sure, there's no kid alive and no human alive that ever chose to have that disease. It is just like any other disease. If you get it, you get it for reasons that are not within your control.
So I think 20 years. So, I mean, you've seen the evolution of bariatric surgery and the advent of GLP-1s. And I mean, how has your view of medicine and patients evolved over that 20 years?
That's a great question, actually, and not one I've been asked too many times. And I try to do as many of these things as I can because I want to get the message out. So first of all, I'm pro medicine. I am pro surgery. I am pro lifestyle. I am pro whatever works for whatever individual. I like to describe myself as treatment agnostic. I don't really have a dog in the fight. I just want people to get healthier. When I first started doing this, I think the first bariatric surgery case I did in an adolescent was in 2004. And somewhat naively, I think, in retrospect, back then, I really did think that surgery was the cure for obesity in patients. I did not as comprehensively understand the disease as I do now. So obviously in the early days, I thought that was the way that people should go. And then clearly I had patients who had weight regain. And I started to think, well, that's weird. I do the same surgery on pretty much everybody. I don't deviate how the surgery's being done. Why do some people regain weight? And I've never, ever bought into the patient blaming and shaming that has gone on for decades in the United States. So I've never, this was just like no child or adult has ever chosen to be struggling with obesity, nobody ever intentionally sabotages their surgery. Like, why would anybody do that? Why would anybody go out and say, you know what, today I'm going to see if I can stretch my pouch, or I'm going to see if I can out eat my bypass? It just doesn't happen. So, so I became really interested in the biology of obesity and how surgery works, doesn't work, who it works and doesn't work for. And now, I think, and obviously this has evolved over time, but I think the people who are still trying to do studies that compare surgery and medications are completely off base. I think the things that we need to study are more like which individuals should get medication before surgery, or which individuals should get surgery and then immediately start medication thereafter, or when do you start medication after surgery, or how do you select patients who might never need surgery and you can treat them just with GLP-1 medications, like things that actually matter to patients, not things that are maybe academically important to somebody. But I am now firmly convinced that there are going to be subsets of people in each one of these groups. Those who have the strongest sort of genetic and epigenetic pressures are probably going to need meds and then surgery and then meds, or some combination of both. There'll be others who, I mean, there are people who respond just to lifestyle, and those people, great, good for that. But that's how sort of like science and the bell curve works. Like, you have the bell curve, right? And there'll be outliers in each direction. And the outliers, the super responders, maybe just need diet and exercise, and that'll be great. And the complete non-responders on the other end of the spectrum are going to need everything you have. And you should not hold back, and you should offer them everything you have. And then there's this big group in between. And you just got to figure out, to me anyway, you got to figure out what's best for each individual. And obviously with surgery, that's a bigger step for a lot of people, and they're not necessarily ready for that in the beginning, which is okay too. So you just got to sort of, in my mind anyway, you just got to work with the people in front of you and try to figure out, okay, what are you ready for? What can you do? And let's get started, and forget about all the other sort of nonsense that's out there in terms of, you know, I think there are too many people in my field, or in this field of obesity medicine, who think all the world's a nail because they have a hammer they like. And
I use the analogy all the time, honestly.
Yeah. Right. And again, it's like, no, like some people need a screwdriver, some people need a Phillips head, some people need a flathead, some people need a hammer. You know, it's like, anyway, it just bugs me. I just personally, it gets me, you know, it makes me unhappy with my own profession and my own colleagues when they don't, you know, for instance, side tangent, people are fully hysterical about muscle mass loss with GLP-1 medications. And I tell people all the time, we've been doing bariatric surgery for patients for 30 years. And the muscle mass loss with surgery is more than that with the GLP-1s. Why won't you people just read the literature and or talk to your surgeons and find out that it doesn't matter? Like, yes, if you're an older adult, you could get sarcopenia. You could have muscle loss that's symptomatic. It's rare, very rare. And in the bariatric surgery patients, we have always told patients after surgery, focus on protein and do resistance training to preserve your lean muscle mass. And that's all that the GLP-1 patient needs as well. So, but all this hysteria now, like, I can't remember which company's trying to develop the anti-obesity medicine that preserves lean muscle mass or whatever.
Oh, there's a bunch of them out. Yeah.
Right. It's just like, again, it makes me shake my head because I don't really know why. Like, we've done this experiment. We have 30 years, 1991, so 35 years of bariatric surgery data to look at. And there aren't a lot of people who've had bariatric surgery who are walking around with symptomatic muscle loss. It's just really rare.
To me, that's not even really a medical question. It's really a stigma and bias question. It's really there was a small subset of people that needed or could afford or had the insurance for bariatric surgery, and you could pretend those didn't exist. But the other 70% of America that has overweight or obesity now has access to something that works, and people want to slow that down. They want to put barriers in it. They want to tell you you shouldn't do it. They want to tell you you have to work for your medicine. Well, I don't have to work for medicine. That's bullshit. It's medicine.
Right. Well, again, yeah, I agree. And it was like when I see papers on like, there was some, I posted about some manuscript, I think that was in a pediatric journal about the ethical framework around treating obesity in children, something like that. And I immediately said, what if we change the name of that to the ethical framework around treating high blood pressure in children? Like, would anybody even take that seriously? Like, there's an ethical framework. In order to treat high blood pressure in children, you have to have some ethical framework around it. But the obesity and stigma around the bias and stigma around obesity has people writing these things. And it's ludicrous to me because it's a disease that needs treating. Like, why are we the ethical framework around treating asthma in children? Yes, we shouldn't treat asthma unless they eat better and exercise more. Like it's none of it makes any sense. And it does all come back down to stigma and bias, which one of my soapbox issues is this whole food is medicine movement.
Mm-hmm.
Food is medicine is basically Jack LaLanne in 1950 telling us if we just eat better and work out more, all disease will go away. And I just dated myself by saying Jack LaLanne. Probably nobody who watches YouTube knows who Jack LaLanne is.
Oh, our viewers will know who Jack LaLanne is. I promise you.
Think about Richard Simmons, but like 20 years earlier.
We've got some 80-plus-year-old viewers out there that will know. I've got viewers who actually went to see Dr. Atkins when he was still a real doctor years ago. So they're out there.
Yeah. But again, the point is really just that, like, food is medicine is a great slogan that someone came up with, and it's a great tagline. It is total gaslighting of America. Food is not medicine. Nutrition is important, and it doesn't have to be medicine to be important. And you will not cure the vast majority of diseases, maybe any diseases, with food alone. So it just really, really bugs me that people are like making a career, making an academic career, but also an online snake oil salesman career out of food as medicine.
Well, and they act like there wasn't good food available. So yes, there are food deserts. I get all of that. But for the vast majority, right, when you walk into an American grocery store, you're going to walk through the produce section first. You have to walk through the good stuff to get to the Twinkies.
That's right. And yes, I agree. I don't mean to minimize food deserts or the impact of nutrition, especially if you're taking a GLP-1 or have had surgery. Super important concepts that everybody should hear about and adhere to if possible. And all of us in the world should eat better, and all of us probably should exercise more. But to basically, sort of, I mean, I don't want to get political, but even our federal government is telling us that if we just eat better, everything is going to be okay. And that is just so far from the truth.
Well, so to me, it goes back to what you said earlier about the medical tools. So are lifestyle tools also valuable? Yes. I want access to all of the tools.
Yeah.
Whatever I need working with my doctor to get to the health goals that I have. Food's certainly one of those. Exercise is one of those. Bariatric surgery is one of those. GLP-1's one. There's, to me, we talk to so many people and we talk about all the new drugs coming and all this. And people are like, oh, well, retatrutide's going to kill all the rest of them. Like, that's not the goal. The goal is to have another tool.
Yeah. And it's not going to kill. Retatrutide's not going to box out the other ones because who has control over all of it is the insurance company.
That's right.
And if they do not, if retatrutide is more expensive than the oral GLP-1s, and maybe it provides more weight loss, but doesn't provide more health benefits, insurance companies aren't going to cover it. and people will get it, people will pay for it out of pocket or, get it some other way. But, again, this, I think the world we live in is so like media intense
Yeah.
and people just, I don't know if they make stuff up or they actually believe it, but they say things that are just like, yeah, retatrutide might have 25% total body weight loss. Tirzepatide might have 20. 5% difference might mean something to some people. It's not going to mean something to everybody.
Well,
And
that was the
again,
conversation the other day when CagriSema's numbers came out, and it was 23 instead. I'm like, really?
yeah, and that was billed as a failure. It was the
Yeah.
study was framed as it didn't meet the endpoints because it was 23 instead of 25.
Which is absurd.
It's totally absurd. And it's mind blowing because it's like, again, the important part is that the cagrilintide is a different pathway and maybe will open up a new medication option people who might not respond to other pathways.
And we see it all the time. I mean, we have viewers that are like, semaglutide and tirzepatide aren't working for me. It's, so they're excited about amylin's coming.
Right. And that might be how retatrutide has a market share as well, is that people who need the third receptor to be stimulated to get weight loss. Who knows? But it is far from, and actually I responded to a media request just yesterday, I think. And it was sort of talking about how the bariatric surgery numbers are down because of the GLP-1s. I think there's a study being released actually today in JAMA Surgery about that. And so somebody asked me for my opinion. And I said, yeah, of course that's going to happen right now. But talk to me in 5 years. Like if the new medications bring more people into the obesity treatment overall market, right? So bariatric surgery has never crossed 1% of the people who are eligible for it getting it. But if now you have 5% of people who are getting who are eligible for GLP-1s, we're basically the same people who are eligible for surgery. Now you have 5% of people getting treatment, and these new medications might make that up to 10%. Just the total trickle-down effect. Again, not getting political, but the more people entering the obesity treatment market will eventually lead to more people getting bariatric surgery because people will either not tolerate the medications, they'll lose insurance coverage will change. They won't want to take a pill or an injection for 50 years. There'll be all kinds of reasons why people go back. The pendulum will shift. It'll never shift all the way like where surgery becomes number one intervention again. Like those days are gone. But, now it's medications, but it's going to come settle in the middle, where people are doing both. And, and that's where it should be, right? I mean, that's what we should be doing is figuring out who needs what. Or helping people figure out what works best for them.
Well, and it's why I get excited about all the new options because 74% of America has overweight or obesity.
Yeah.
Not all of them are going to need bariatric surgery. Not all of them are going to respond to one of the two medicines we have today.
Yeah.
But
and in kids, we only have
market will get bigger.
Yeah. And in kids, we only have one medication, basically.
All right.
You can use phentermine and topiramate and Qsymia combo, and we use Vyvanse for some appetite suppression in some. But in kids, there's only semaglutide or semaglutide, however you say it. And all this innovation going on in anti-obesity medicine, and the kids are left out. They're just not. There's no revolution in options for children. It's semaglutide, and that's it. And that's been the way it's been for several years now, and it's the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future, at least a couple more years. And why? Like, why does a 16-year-old who probably needs obesity treatment more than a 45-year-old, why can't that person get access? It just, again, it's like it pains me.
But I think there's a couple of rounds of Tirzepatide research for adolescents going on, but they're
they're
like phase 2. They're ways out.
they're coming, right? But they're Lilly is actually pursuing the diabetes indication for tirzepatide before they pursue the obesity indication.
It's easier to get
So
insurance to pay for diabetes.
exactly, definitely and all of the decisions are financially based, right? That's what industry does. So can't blame them for that. But one of my recent, I wrote a column recently for a sort of like an online trade publication that's called Clinical Leader, and it's about clinical trials. And my column was that because people don't know this or even pay attention to these sorts of things, but the way it works in the United States is that pediatric trials for diseases that cross over between adults and kids are not mandatory. They're recommended, and a trial plan might be required, but actually not doing the trial is not mandated legally. However, in Europe, it is. So that's why probably we have semaglutide for kids because, Novo Nordisk is a European company and they had to do the pediatric trials to get adult approval in the EU. And why Lilly doesn't have a pediatric drug because they're not mandated to. They can do whatever they want. And I don't know the status of tirzepatide in the EU, whether it's, being used or been approved in countries or whatever.
But I don't think it is for kids. I don't think so.
Well, definitely not for kids. I don't know how much adult usage it has, but the point is that the two different regulatory bodies are different. And in the US, kids are a suggestion, and in Europe, they're mandated. So again, it just blows my mind that that's how it works, and that there's no the US government, no one can hold Lilly's feet to the fire and make them do a pediatric trial. They'll do one because there's a market and there's enough uproar. But tirzepatide was approved. I don't even know when, but I guess a couple of years ago now. And it won't be approved in kids for at least 2 or 3 more years. So it's just, the pediatric obesity options lag far behind. And frankly, that's why bariatric surgery had been the leading treatment for kids for a long time.
Well, so if I'm a parent with an overweight kid, right? I mean, what advice would you give? I mean, what are you telling people when they're like, man, I'm worried about her or him, and what do we do?
Yeah. Well, it's tough, right? Because there's not a lot of access to care. So what I usually tell them is to bring it up with their pediatrician or their primary care provider and see what, if anything, their primary care team is willing or able to do. And start there. And then if they don't have resources or don't feel comfortable dealing with the disease of obesity, ask them for referrals for someone who might. But unfortunately, even that ends up at a dead end for many people. So unfortunately, I generally tell them that they have to self-advocate. They have to, push their primary care providers. They have to push for referrals. And if that doesn't work, they have to, unfortunately, go online and try to find people like me who can actually help them. And they're like, so when I was full-time in Washington, D.C., our medical clinic had like a 3-month waiting list, and several hundred patient waiting list. And because the medical clinic basically broke even and didn't make money, the hospital didn't want to invest more. Like there was no benefit to the hospital to see more patients because they were going to break even whether they saw 1,000 patients or 2,000 patients. So they didn't really.
Joys of for-profit medicine. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, and that's where it is. That's where we are and everywhere, really. It's like, okay, I know of another program that I'm not going to mention where the surgeon was told, basically was told, you're doing too many surgeries. You have to slow your program down, which is bizarre. But that's what they were told. They were told, we're not meeting our metrics of whatever metric. And thus we need you guys to slow down. We need you guys to, basically stop seeing so many patients. And it's like, it's so counterintuitive, so contrary to what we should be doing as a healthcare system. We should be improving access for everybody, not restricting it. And, that's why, again, I think people get frustrated, physicians get frustrated, other providers get frustrated. No one's really happy with the American healthcare system, I don't think. I don't know. I'd rarely talk to anybody who's like, oh yeah, I love my healthcare situation. Maybe if they have a concierge doctor that they pay for out of pocket, but those might be the only people who actually like their current medical situation.
It's funny. The practice that my family sees has a variety of doctors in it, and they're all pretty good. And they're all, my doctor's actually an internist, but I went to get it. And it took me 2 years to get onto a GLP-1, mostly because of cost, not because of the doctor. Right. But the first time we talked about it, he had never written a prescription for it. And he was very honest. He was like, I haven't done this, but if you're interested, let me come back in a couple of weeks and let me look into it. And so he's kind of learned along with me, which is fine. Honesty is a good thing, right? It's kind of what
transparency is super important in doctor-patient relationships. And I think people do need to understand that most providers or docs who've gone to medical school, providers in their medical training, whatever pathway they take, didn't get a lot of obesity education during their medical school training or residency training because it wasn't taught, still isn't taught in most medical schools. And again, my passion is pediatric obesity. Pediatric obesity is nowhere in pediatric residency training programs. It doesn't exist. It's not talked about unless the place you happen to be going to medical school has a tertiary care clinic. If they don't, you don't get any education about it. And, to be honest, writing a prescription for a GLP-1 medication is not rocket science. It's actually really easy.
Yeah.
And because the manufacturers make it super easy so that anybody could, basically read the package insert or go online. But there's just this trepidation that for some reason people are so frightened to take that step and actually treat the disease. And another one of my soapbox issues is, how do I get pediatricians more comfortable just treating it in their offices rather than referring out? Like, how can I help the primary care providers, whoever they are, feel more comfortable in treating this disease? Because if you have 15 million children with obesity in the United States, there's no way that enough specialty clinics could ever be created to handle that volume. And in the adult world, it's similar. And in the adult world, the primary care physicians are doing a better job, and they're definitely doing some of the work. But in the adult world, you have 150 million Americans with obesity. And, how many how many adult obesity clinics would that require to get all the people treated? The math doesn't math, as they say. It just doesn't work.
To me, to fight this at the scale it's required, your primary care physician is going to have to learn more. They're going to have to participate because is it nice that there's no obesity certification? And do we say, hey, you should go look for a doctor? Yeah, that's nice, but there's not many of them.
No, and actually,
there's no such thing as pediatric obesity certification.
No, there isn't. And that's another soapbox issue for me. But so it goes back to the stigma and bias and some of the academic protectionism of docs and people wanting to make careers. But I don't remember anybody having to go to asthma certification or ADHD certification or blood pressure or cholesterol medication certification. So why does obesity need certification? Why do I need certification beyond medical school training or a medical license to prescribe a medication that truly Again, the package insert says, give X. Oops, sorry, it's my pager. Sorry about that. Actually, for those of you who didn't think I was a doctor, that was a plant that I just had my pager go off to prove it. But actually, what's even more surprising is that some hospitals, like the current one I'm working at, actually use pagers still, which is like,
I didn't know they still existed.
man, I mean, yeah, talk about your ancient technology. It's like a 8-track tape player or something. But anyway, the point is that I was going to say, and this is going to be an unpopular one, is that again, the two medications that are available have very easy to follow prescription dosing advice. You start at dose X, you wait a month, you go to dose X plus 1 if there are no side effects, whatever. If the weight loss isn't too much, no untoward things, X plus 1, X plus 2, and it's like a cookbook. So why do we need additional certification beyond that? Costs money, obviously, because otherwise they wouldn't do it. Like, why isn't it just part of everybody's medical training, and then you just do it, and then you don't need to have people spend money or their own time to get this extra certification? And maybe probably there is a need for some people to have that additional level of training. Like if you're working with your primary care doctor and it's not working for you, and now you need something more or different, then yes, that's the time you go to the tertiary care obesity clinic, or you get referred to the bariatric surgeon or something. But in the beginning, the primary care docs can just do it. It's not rocket science.
Well, and it's interesting.
I've written the prescriptions. I've done it. It's not, that's
the easy part. It's the pre-authorizations that are the pain in the butt.
Yeah. Well, that is a pain. I agree.
But I mean, 2 years in now, my doctor has now written enough prescriptions and worked with enough patients that he has a perspective and he has experience and he's done that. So, I mean, early on, I certainly started on, Lily's, hey, titrate up every month. And, now he's kind of evolved to the place where a lot of people are, well, I want to keep you on. So let's minimize your side effects as much as possible. So let's take that titration a little slower if we need to. Because the longer you stay on, the better it is.
Right. And I certainly have patients who never make it to the top dose, right? They find a dose lower than the highest dose where they have reasonable weight loss and side effects that they can tolerate. And we just make the joint decision. I pretty much put it in my patient's hands, and I say, okay, for me, I would stay where you are because things are good and I wouldn't go up. But how do you feel? Like, what do you want to do? And again, most people, if they see weight loss and they aren't having side effects, are like, yeah, let's just.
So he said, we're practicing medicine, so we're going to keep practicing until we get it right.
Right. Of course. That's the old joke. That's why they call it medical practice, because no one ever gets it right. Or perfect, or whatever the right word is. But microdosing, obviously people are doing it, and for good reason. And the insurance companies or the industry, pharmaceutical companies are never going to study that. Like, there's never going to be a trial that shows that if you stop at, not the second highest dose, but you stay on it longer, that's just as good as the highest dose for a shorter period of time. Like, they're never going to do that study. So that kind of stuff has to be figured out in the real world. And it will, and people are doing it. And
I mean, I tell people, they're like, well, I looked at the averages and this drug does this percentage. I'm like, the averages don't matter.
Totally don't matter.
Let me tell you, I've lost 38% of my body weight. I have interviewed people who have lost 60% of their body weight. Yeah. Now, are you going to do that? I have no idea, but it is possible. And I can show you a lot of people.
Right. So I have one of my probably most boring videos that I put on my channel or website is about statistics, because people, like, nobody likes statistics, but that's how it works, right? The average. So people don't even know that only 2/3 of individuals actually respond within one standard deviation of the average. So, if your average weight loss is 20%, and let's say your standard deviation is 5%, just for the ease of the math. So that means that 2/3 of people out there will either lose somewhere between 25% and 15%. But that means 1/3 of the people out there are going to either lose more than 25% or less than 15%. So that's 1/3, right? So again, right. So people just don't, and again, it's boring. But I actually do tell patients something similar to that when I'm talking about, I don't go quite into that level of detail, but I tell them that, as you said, averages are just averages, and there's nothing that we can do as clinicians to figure out whether you're going to be average, above average, or below average.
Well, I mean, we get the question all the time. Well, it says 20% or 18% or whatever it says. Is it just going to stop at that? I'm like, well, the medicine can't read the percentage in your body. There's no magic off switch.
Yeah. Although it does, and I think that people are learning. So like bariatric surgery, interestingly to me, does have almost like a pretty finite off switch, right? It's most people after bariatric surgery won't lose more than 15 BMI points. There are some that do, but in general, 13 to 15 BMI units is what most bariatric surgery procedures result in. A little bit more for a bypass, a little bit less for a sleeve, but whatever. And I think with the GLP-1s, it may not be exactly the same, but the body does fight malnutrition.
Oh, for sure. Oh, we see that all the time. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know because I obviously have never tried to force somebody to lose too much weight with a GLP-1. Of the, let's say, 750 patients who I did bariatric surgery, 750 children I did bariatric surgery for since 2010. And I could probably count on one hand or less how many had lost too much weight, because the body's really good at fighting that. But could you do that with medication to override the body's natural adaptive mechanisms? Maybe. I don't really know. But usually the body figures out alternative pathways.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to there's a reason these are prescription drugs. They're not over-the-counter drugs. You're supposed to be working with your doctor. You're supposed to have a plan. You're supposed to do all that stuff, because is it possible for humans to hurt ourselves? Yes, it is. We can hurt ourselves. We know that.
True.
That's not the goal, though.
No. And in theory, yeah, responsible providers will help folks. People often ask when they start obesity care, well, how much weight should I lose? And, that question can be answered many different ways. But I generally tell people, my goal as your provider is to get you to lose enough weight so that your medical issues have resolved. Whether you want to lose more weight for other reasons, depending on what those reasons are, I'm willing to help you achieve those goals. I'm not going to let you go to a BMI of 15 or 18.
Right.
That's not going to happen. And I generally tell people, if they get to a BMI under 25, which is the top end of normal weight, that's the end for me. I don't, I'm willing to get you to normal weight. I'm not willing to get you below normal weight or lower in the normal weight category, unless you have medical problem. Like, there are certain ethnicities that need to have a lower weight, and there's certain medical problems that certainly can be better if your BMI.
But that doesn't mean you stop treatment, right? That means the treatment changes.
Right. Well, as you talked about maintenance, that's when you start, lowering doses, or you talk about maintenance. And I actually, before the pills came out, I thought the pills were going to have the most impact on maintenance, because I thought the injections will be easier for most people when they're in the weight losing phase. But then maybe when they sort of plateau and they're ready to go to maintenance, that pills might be easier. Yeah. That might not be true. That might turn out to be.
I don't disagree with you there. I have a hot take that most people disagree with, though, on that, is I think the orals are going to double the size of the obesity medication market in the next year. simply because doctors are more willing to prescribe them. They're not as uncomfortable. It doesn't feel as bad to write a pill prescription as it does an injection. And the starting price is $149.
Right. And it should get cheaper too, I think.
Right. So if you walk in
Right.
and the doctor says, hey, I have a pill and you can lose 17% of your body weight or more for 140, who's going to say no to that?
Right. And I actually think, there's a company that's working on a monthly injection.
Yeah.
And my initial thoughts of that were like, man, I hope that medication doesn't have the same side effects as the weekly injection does, because if you take a monthly injection and you have side effects for that whole first week or whatever, the patient's going to drop like flies. But that medication also might end up just being your maintenance kind of thing, like a low dose of a monthly injection. That could be cool. Like that could be a good way to just stay at your current weight and not have to take a pill every day. And so I don't know where that, that medication is probably years away from making it to market
I think Amgen's got that in development and they're like phase 2 right now. So it's years. But we saw when we were at Obesity Week, we saw Dr. Lottie Knudsen, one of the discoverers of GLP-1s, talk. And she said theoretically you could go to yearly injections that they could get to. It might be 20 years out, but
so that's another. So here's I don't know if people have already talked about this on your show, but so no one has a GLP-1 shortage in their body. That's not the problem. The problem is that you have another enzyme called DPP-4 that breaks down your natural GLP-1. And the way these GLP-1 medications work to create weight loss is they just actually block access to the GLP-1 part of the molecule from DPP-4, so that your GLP-1 that you get in your injection or pill stays around longer and is able to do what it does. So I don't disagree that if you could figure out a way structurally, what's it called? Physical chemistry. If you could figure out a physical chemistry mechanism by which you could block the DPP-4 from getting access to your medication, GLP-1 based medication, I could see it being stretched out longer than a month. And it is certainly even possible that Amgen, maybe they don't even know that, maybe they just started with a month, but actually it's a 3-month drug or a 6-month drug. Who knows? Like, you don't know.
And they talked about that a little bit in their analyst call about the potential for it. I mean, it was interesting because, it's that sort of signaling problem, right? It's that the DPP-4 is basically turning the signal off, right? It's going, no, stop, not sending it to the brain. So let's go to pediatrics.
Actually, one last point on there. I don't know if people are working on DPP-4 blockers, but like everybody's working on the GLP-1 meds, but it's interesting because it's not actually the GLP-1 that's the problem. It's the DPP-4 that's the problem. And
I think there's a few out there in really, really early stages I've seen, but at my last count, there's like almost 200 medications in development right now. Yeah. Obviously they won't all get to market, but
and again, like there is no industry, there's no pharmaceutical company that has asked for my opinion or paid for my opinion.
Yeah.
But I would be telling these people, stop. Like we don't need 200 new medications for this. We need, we might need slightly better mousetraps or different pathways and this and that. But like this holy grail of trying to find a medication that's as effective as surgery, I don't get it. Like, I just don't really, I don't see the market for it, frankly.
Well, so for me, from the patient side, I think the medications we have are perfectly fine for most people. We may need a few more with amylins or whatever to take care of everyone. So you may top out at, 5, 6, 7 medicines just to do all of that. To me, the reason more drugs need to exist is just so that there's more options for insurance companies to negotiate and such that systematically I have access. Because right now we got PBMs getting in the middle of Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, and they're all fighting over not. And I need Pfizer and Amgen and all those guys in there slugging it out so I can get it.
Right. And don't get me wrong. More innovation is always better.
Mhm.
But from like, if I were the analyst, the financial analyst talking to them about their market share, like the market share that the next greatest drug gets is going to be totally dependent on the insurance companies and PBMs
Yeah.
and all that other stuff. And frankly, like you said, the two that are out there are pretty good.
Yeah.
They're going to go generic at some point, right? And then they're going to be really cheap. And then if you have a more expensive option that gets you incrementally better weight loss or comorbidity resolution, you know, I don't see that being a huge moneymaker. I think that's going to be, you know, a fringe nibbling
Well, that's
around the fringes.
yeah. I mean, the financial analysts, I think, are missing it because the only number they're looking at is total weight loss. They're like, which one goes the fastest and
Right.
lose the most?
Totally.
I don't, at this point, I don't really think it matters.
Right.
To me, what I want is, it's what we talk about CagriSema. To me, that's like a Honda Accord and a Toyota Camry, right? They both do huge sales. They're both wildly profitable. They're the same basic thing, for sure. But yeah, they're the same basic thing. So I want to be able to, just like I can with a car, come into my doctor and go, hey, here's all the options.
Yeah. Well, and it'll never be quite like a car because it's obviously different. And people don't go into their doctor's office and say, you know, I don't think I want propranolol for my high blood pressure. I want whatever your other drug.
And that's a great example. I mean, I've changed, I'm not on the high blood pressure medicine anymore, but I mean, I can tell you, I've been on it for 30 years, basically. And every year my insurance policy changed and I'd go in and he'd write prescription and I'd come back and I'd be like, this is like $500. What? And he'd write a different prescription. I didn't research it. I didn't look it up. I just took whatever he gave me. That's fine. I don't really care as long as you can take care of me.
Right. Right. So I do think, you know, again, yeah, more options are better. Cheaper options are definitely better. I think that's where the pills are going to probably make the biggest impact, is that they should be significantly cheaper. And I don't even think, I'm sure that someone behind the scenes came up with that $150 number and kind of like snookered the federal government and said, yeah, you know, right now the injectables are 300 and we're going to give you this great deal. It's going to be 150. And when the pills come out, they'll also be 150. And they didn't tell the federal government that it actually costs like $2 to make a pill.
Well, and if they were going to move the price up to $300 for the highest dose.
Well, that too, but I just think that like the making the medication, the packaging and the distribution of pills is so much easier than injectables, that I'm sure that the 100, whatever price point they end on, the pharmaceutical companies will make a healthy profit.
Oh, for sure.
They are smart people. They are very smart people who are in those companies, at least on the marketing side. Maybe not in the R&D if they're working on all these different drugs that may or may not have any great benefit. But once they have a drug that works, they know how to maximize the profit from that drug quite well.
Yeah, they're going to be okay. We're not worried about them. Well, so let's go back to pediatric though, because I'm curious. We talk about maintenance for adults all the time, but obviously you're dealing with a kid. The kid's growing, they're changing, hormones, all kinds of stuff. So what does the progression of care and potential maintenance look like for a kid?
Yeah. So I've done more bariatric surgery on preteens than anyone in the country. Actually, I've done more bariatric surgery on kids than anyone in the country, but preteens are another special interest of mine. And when I first started doing that, and I've been doing that for, again, I guess I would say probably 10 years, there were lots of folks who were like, well, what's going to happen when they go through puberty? What's going to happen when they, you know, are you going to stunt their vertical growth? What's going to happen to these kids? And my response was back then, and still is, well, is it healthier to go through puberty with type 2 diabetes? Or is it going to be healthier to go through puberty with your weight under control and without type 2 diabetes? Mm-hmm. And it took, obviously I had to do it as part of clinical trials because it was so out there at the time. But the reason I bring it up is that nothing happens to their growth. Nothing happens to their nutritional status as long as you keep up with it properly, just like you would with an adult. Multivitamins, focusing on protein and hydration, all those things, exercise, etc. And for many kids, it's just, that's it, right? They get their surgery and then they go about their lives and they just, do what they need to do. And then if they eventually have weight regain or something else changes in their lives, they might have to go, they might have to restart a medication. They might have to, occasionally revisional surgery type thing. But it's actually, I think people thought it was going to be much more complicated than it is. It's really not that. I mean, I don't want to downplay my 20 years of experience, but it's not as complicated as people would think. Like, the surgery works. Surgery works. And I don't do bypasses for kids, and we do sleeves. So it's a much different situation.
Mhm.
Like, I'm basically doing a surgical GLP-1 procedure, right? I'm basically controlling people's food noise.
It's restricting. It's not removing a piece.
Right. Exactly.
I'm not a doctor, so tell me if that's not
right. Well, it's rerouting, right? So the bypass makes it so you don't absorb some of the food you eat. Mm-hmm. Sleeve, you absorb everything. So as long as you eat right after a sleeve, you do fine. And like I said, 748 out of the 750 kids did fine with their nutrition. So, in pediatric care in general, we're more accustomed to more frequent touch points and more frequent check-ins and things like that. So we did spend a lot of time making sure these kids were fine. And they need mental health support. They need diet and exercise support, just like adults do. But it's not really all that different, to be honest. They probably need a little bit more mental health support because of the challenges of adolescence and growing up and being
right. That's probably true of all adolescents. So.
Right. But, and one of the things we learned along the way, which again, didn't really occur to me when we started, because when I started, I was one of the first people in the country doing it, is that we didn't do a good job of preparing people after surgery to deal with the question or the comment, wow, you look so great. What did you do? Like, we never talked to the kid. We didn't think about preparing the kids to deal with that.
Yeah.
And now, starting maybe 10, 15 years ago, we started telling them, listen, when you start losing weight and you start like being more social, getting more people asking you on dates, or you're asking more people on dates, you're going to have all these other social situations that you haven't had before. And we need to help you think about how you're going to deal with those, because it's going to happen. You're going to get and it's not even, frankly, it's not even appropriate. It's one of those, again, stigma and bias things where people feel like they can just come up to you and say, oh my God, you've lost so much weight. How'd you do it? Like, oh my God, your blood pressure's in such great control. How'd you do it? Like, it's like, people don't do that. So it is just part of the nature of the beast. But, yeah. So there's a lot of that part of the maintenance. I think initially we didn't quite spend enough time figuring out, and now we do a better job of that.
So what does that look like now with GLP-1s?
It's the same thing, right? Like, because people lose a lot of weight on GLP-1s, right? And it's the same thing. And if you're 16 or 17 on a GLP-1 and you're starting to lose weight and your friends start to notice, they're going to ask you how you're doing it. And are you going to say, I'm on a GLP-1? Or are you going to say, none of your business? You're going to say, I just work out more, like, it's up to you how you address the question, but the question's going to come because that's the society we live in. And I think, again, that is a conversation that the kids should have with their parents, kids should have with a mental health professional, kind of thing. And, it is, it's part of the weight loss journey for people. Like, I'm sure you got asked a million times.
Oh yeah.
You were doing,
And I can tell you,
And
I
there's
mean,
so much.
I started a YouTube channel and say my weight on air every freaking day, which is the most bizarre thing in the world. Um, you know, my wife and I have two completely different experience, even though we've done this all along. You know, she's kind of been that classic suburban mom who's dieted and done all the stuff, and I'm a dude who just kind of gained and lost 20 pounds
Yeah,
stupid ways, and so
yeah,
it's just very
over and
different
over again.
experiences
Yeah,
and very different communication styles. So it
yeah,
makes it interesting.
yeah. But
Oh,
again, I think it's, it's like, um, I think there's so much stigma against people with obesity. And
mhm.
then there's stigma against them when they do something about it. Oh, you just took the easy way out. And there's even stigma. There are even medical people who believe that, surgery is the easy way out. And you should, try medication first because surgery should always be the last resort. And it's so, again, it's like mind boggling to me why people are so judgmental and why they're not just open minded and like, okay, you get to choose what shirt you wear today. Why shouldn't you get to choose how you want to deal with your disease? Like, why shouldn't you get to choose whether you want a GLP-1 or not, or whether you want to, try diet and exercise first or whatever? Like, and why is it so shameful if you have to admit to somebody, like kudos to Oprah for basically describing her whole journey for the
Yep.
whole world to hear. And in part, I think it's probably because the whole world knew her journey anyway, because she was on TV all the time and had talked about it so many times over the years. But again, it's like mind your own business, really. It's like, I have a disease. I'm trying to deal with it as best I can. I know you're trying to be helpful by saying I look so great. How did I do it? But that's not helpful, really, for
Well,
most
and
people.
honestly, I have a tendency to have like 3 or 4 different answers, but there's a whole breed of person who, and I know them when they walk up, they just ran a marathon or there's this whole breed of, and it's no offense to anybody, but that's the person that I just look at and go, "Thanks for asking. My doctor and I have a great plan to help me get healthy." And that's all I
Yeah.
say. I just move
Well,
on.
well, and again, and again, I don't want to bash the food as medicine movement alone, so I'll bash some other movements. The fit at any size movement. Totally agree with you. You can be fit at any size and you shouldn't body shame anybody. You should allow people to do whatever they want. But then as the fit at any size movement, you can't judge people who decide they don't want to be fit at any size.
Mhm.
They want to be fit at the size they want to be at. So don't judge them for taking medicine or getting surgery.
Mhm.
Just as much as you want to be accepted for what you believe in, accept other people for believing in what they believe. And the same thing goes for like the vegan diet people. If the whole world just ate vegan, obesity would be wiped off the planet Earth. False. Totally false. Totally untrue. And you really need to stop saying that because it's judgmental and it ostracizes the people who won't respond to a vegan diet.
I mean,
And
I
then
can
a
tell
lot
you,
of
we get.
people
Well, I mean, we can upset everybody and talk about keto and fasting too. So it's,
yes, yes. And
that,
yeah,
there will now be comments underneath this video an
yeah.
hour in that'll be like,
Feel
"Well, it
free to
worked
hate
for
me.
me."
I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but intermittent fasting doesn't work. It's a sham. It's gaslighting, just like everything else. It's all calorie restriction. It works the same way as calorie restriction. There's no magic to it. But yeah, there'll be plenty of people who
I'm just in a place of if that works for you, that's great. But
again, yes. If that's the only way you can calorie restrict, do it. Again, I totally agree. And I don't mean to bash it as a strategy. I mean to bash the science that tells you that the chemistry in your body is different because that's not true.
uh,
It does work for some
I
people.
don't like the religious zealots about it that are just like, "Yeah, I
Right.
believe this, and you have to be just like me."
Right. And that's another great thing a great point that people, probably not people watching your channel, but people in general don't understand. Like, or maybe people watching your channel. The whole idea of, oh, I see you're struggling with your weight. I lost 20 pounds by sticking my finger up my nose once a day. You should do that because it worked for me. Like
Yep.
that, again, it just goes to show that the understanding of the biology of obesity is so lacking because there is actually no evidence that suggests what works for one person is going to work the same in the neighbor or friend. There's some evidence that it might work in family members if you had a response to one medication, that response might be the same in other family members. But beyond that, again, it goes back to the bell curve and no, I shouldn't do what worked for you just because it worked for you. If there's evidence that it works for the majority of people, that's different. And maybe I should consider that. But sort of goes back to your comment. Thanks for your opinion, but my doctor and I will come up with a plan that might work best for me.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what I mean?
exactly right. Well, very cool. So I know you're working on a couple of books. Tell us about those.
Yeah, and actually, although this episode was supposed to be about pediatric obesity, we talked about like a bunch
We
of
talked about all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
and I'll be happy to come back and talk more focused on pediatric obesity
sure.
at some other time. So people may or may not, people who are suffering from obesity probably understand that 40 to 70% of obesity is thought to be heritable, meaning being able to be passed down from parents to children to offspring. But the real world doesn't really understand that. Certainly the people who are advocating all these other sort of, what's the right word, alternative treatments don't understand the biological drivers of obesity. So the book that I'm trying to write for like similar sort of how Oprah wrote her book in that pathway is about childhood obesity and the genetic and epigenetic components of it and what you can do about it. And obviously all the stop the blame and shame, all that stuff is in there, but it's from a different angle because it's not only are, the parents are blamed and shamed for having a kid that suffers from their weight. And then sometimes the kid is shamed and blamed by their own parents because the parents don't have a weight issue, but the kid does. So it's so complex, the different, the different mental health aspects are at play when you're talking about kids. So that's in there too. And it's almost like a hybrid of a why book, but also a how-to book. So that's also into like what you can do about it and how do you navigate the healthcare system, because the healthcare system sucks and it's not built for people to be able to get the care they need. So that's a big part of it. And frankly, that book's probably, although hopefully there's a publisher looking at it right now who's thinking that they might sign me to finish it. But the reality is that book's probably a year and a half away. The other book that I'm working on that hopefully will come to the marketplace sooner, because I'll probably self-publish that one, is actually just a handbook for pediatricians to use so that they can start treating obesity in their primary care clinics and not refer to specialty care clinics and really just get the ball rolling, with in their pediatric offices or primary care offices. So it's a resource for them that they can, it'll be a hard copy, but obviously they can also, depending on what their office structure looks like, there'll be other ways they can use it. It'll actually have QR codes that links to the videos that I've made over the years about each of the different topics. And it's just part of the mission of trying to improve access to care for children with weight issues.
No, it's important to us. I can tell you that. I mean, I can tell you just from our family, if there would have been a way that you told me, hey, I can help your kid at 6, never have to face this, we would have done it. We would have done it.
Yep.
It would have changed their lives.
Yep. And I saw a kid recently in my practice that was 10. And I told the family, I said, listen, I'm sorry that I didn't know you 4 years ago, because I could have helped you a whole lot more at 6 and I can help you at 10.
Mm-hmm.
A unique situation, but there are, that in general, pediatric obesity is addressed later than it should be. You know, there is really no benefit in waiting to treat it or to address it in anyone, and especially in kids, because if your genetic pressures are so severe that you have obesity as a child, you almost have a different disease than the folks who didn't manifest their obesity until they were adults. It progresses
Yeah, I mean,
faster.
it's an interesting point
Different.
because even, there's a bunch of work around phenotypes for adults and injuries and life change. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff out there. You never see kids in that mix though.
Well, yeah, in part because they're not on Earth long enough to have those things happen to them. Like if you have obesity at 10, it's not because you had, lost your job at 8. You know what I mean? Like,
But is there a whole
different.
separate set of phenotypes for kids?
So the short answer is probably yes. No one knows.
No, I'm not a doctor. I just make stuff up. I don't know.
No. But the point is that, and that's why I'm so into the genetic and epigenetic.
Yeah, it's cool.
Of this disease. Because, again, like I've treated 8-year-olds with type 2 diabetes, 10-year-olds with type 2 diabetes. And you're like, okay, it's not that you ate at McDonald's every day for the first 6 years of your life because you didn't, and nobody does. And so why do you, as an 8-year-old, have such severe disease? And it comes back to biology, which generally always comes back to genetics and epigenetics. And so if you have diabetes at 10 in a BMI of 35 or 40 or whatever, your outlook for living a life without obesity related comorbidities can only be improved with aggressive treatment. Like you can't, that's not a patient who can afford to sort of just move slowly, sequentially through the different options. That's a patient who needs more aggressive care, more urgent care. And there are orthopedic diseases in children that you don't see from weight, that you don't see in adults. MASH, metabolic dysfunction associated steatohepatitis, is worse in kids and progresses faster in kids than in adults. Even diabetes. So kids go from pre-diabetes to diabetes faster than adults do. So it is almost, and I go over all this in my book, it is almost a different disease, or even maybe just like a more severe form of the disease. But yes, there are different phenotypes for sure. And I like to say that different phenotypes, it's actually, I say it slightly differently, because a phenotype is how a disease looks on the outside. From the outside, they actually all, or not all, many of the kids look the same. Many of the adults look the same. You know someone with obesity when you see them usually, but it's the genotypes. It's how they got there that differ so greatly. And did they get there from, adverse childhood events if you're an adult? Did they get there from, single gene or polygene defect or epigenetic modification of the genes that they have? That's hopefully where the field is going, because if we can identify those different genotypes, then maybe we can figure out the best or most likely successful treatment plan to go with each one of those genotypes.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much work happening right now. I mean, we did a story in the news the other day about a company that's got genetic testing that, I mean, they're ways out. They're 5 years out, that theoretically, if you had those 10 drugs or however many are out there, you could test and go, this is the one you're most likely to be effective with.
Yeah. But there is, this is not a pitch for my company or any company I'm involved with, because this is actually free, but Prevention Genetics online, and you have a child with obesity, you can get a saliva swab kit sent to your house. And they test for about 100 different obesity related genes. And it's not like a clinically approved testing, but it can give people a lot of information that then they might need to get confirmed via more medical grade testing. But yeah, it's like a pretty much a for people who meet the criteria, they just send it to your house. And I have done that for lots and lots and lots of the kids I've taken care of. And because in many ways, well, it does two things. One is it, again, alleviates the blame and shame that the families feel. Because if I say, look, you have 3 different gene defects that are related to obesity, the likelihood is you could have starved yourself and exercised every day from age 5, but it probably wouldn't have done anything because your genes are saying that you were prone to go this way no matter what. And it also used to give me information to convince insurance companies to approve whatever treatment I was trying to initiate. I could say, look, patient has these different genes that are messed up. Diet and exercise isn't going to work for them. They need medication or surgery or whatever. And it helped with that too, for sure.
So, well, that's a good thing. If you can get insurance to approve whatever it takes.
Yeah. So that is one thing I would tell people to go look at is probably my number one thing that I tell people if they have a young child with obesity to do is to get that free genetic testing, because it really can change the course of therapy.
I think that's fascinating. So I'll get the link from you and I can put that in the description as well. And we're not associated. Nobody's making a profit. We're not associated with that. Well, very good. Well, tell people how they can find you out there in the world.
Yeah. So every podcast I've done or every one of these things, I give my email address and no one has ever emailed me, but I'll give it again. And it's evan.nadler@epnmd.com. My website and YouTube channel are slightly easier to remember because they're Obesity Explained. That's the name of the website and the name of the YouTube channel. So I guess the website's obesityexplained.com and the YouTube channel is whatever the YouTube handle @Obesity Explained. And same on Instagram and TikTok, although I'm not as prolific on those sites, I guess I'd say. But I'm truly, truly open to people like reaching out. And it's just weird to me that I've been doing this like you for a couple of years now. And no patient has ever, there've been some medical providers who've reached out to me, but I haven't even gotten a single like, hey doc, I saw your video on YouTube and I had a question.
Sounds like my guess is our viewers are going to take that challenge. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good. Cause, again, there's nothing in it for me right now. I'm just trying to help people. So, I just think that, again, it's been my passion for 20 plus years. I think still a huge, long way to go for childhood obesity before it's even close to being adequately addressed by providers and the medical community. So it's my mission to see if I can make that happen.
We like that mission, man. We're all in. So let us know how we can help you. Well, very good. Well, thank you, Dr. Nadler. We appreciate you joining us. We definitely want to have you back when the book comes out so we can tell everybody about the book. Even the one for doctors, believe it or not, I can tell you our viewers would love to see that one as well, because they always want to be equipped to be able to go in and talk to their doctor.
Yeah.
Like, how do I more effectively communicate? Because my doctor's not listening to me.
Sure. Right. Yeah, no, and I think that's unfortunately the world we live in, right? Where, like, again, sort of tangent, when the direct-to-consumer advertising started for drugs like Skyrizi and Rinvoq and all these things, I was like, this is crazy. How are they going to, like, why does this make financial sense? Like, is some doc going to prescribe Rinvoq because the patient comes in and says, hey, doc, I saw the Rinvoq commercial and I want it. But that's what happened, right? Because that's what people are doing. Like, it's working. Those strategies are working.
Well, it's working. I mean, honestly, I'm not really a fan of the advertising. We're only one of 2 countries in the world who even allows that sort of advertising. But if it starts the conversation with your doctor about whatever your problem is, maybe that's not the right solution, something else is. Great. Have a conversation with your doctor.
Right. Yeah. And maybe that's why it works, is that it just starts conversations and makes some of the providers who might be set in their ways think outside the box a little bit. But, like, again, when I first saw it, I was like, did that many people actually have psoriatic arthritis? I didn't know it was like such a major problem that it needs to be advertised on TV 24/7.
And
But
there's more obscure
that's
things
cool.
out there that they're advertising now, and I'm like,
Oh, yeah,
"Really? I have to
100%.
look it up and go, what the heck is that?"
Yeah. So do I. And I actually do this for a living.
Yeah.
I do
You
the
have
same
the
thing.
education for it, I don't. Well, very good. Well, thank you guys. So go follow Dr. Nadler. He's doing some great work out there. We'll have him back on for some more stuff, maybe some more pediatric stuff, and to talk about his books when they come out. So thank you very much for joining us, man. We appreciate
Hey,
it.
my pleasure. And honestly, I appreciate the work that you're doing with your channel, because I think the more people out there giving positive messaging is super important. And yeah, I'll be happy to come back. I'd love to come back because, talking about this is talking about this more and more and educating people more and more is the only path forward that has a chance of working. Like, this is what we have to do.
Absolutely. Well, very good. So if you're out there and you haven't already liked and subscribed to The Downsize, please do that. Then immediately go over to Dr. Nadler's and like and subscribe to his channel as well. And we'll have him back on. All right. That's it for today. So thank you very much. My name is Christopher Durham, and we are The Downsized.